Wow, what a crowd, what a big crowd. I hired Kristen Kish 3 years ago to cook at Stir. It's my demonstration kitchen and cookbook store in the South End. It's a very intimate spot. It only seats 10 people. So when I'm doing a class, I'm really working closely with that chef. And it's completely different than being on the line in a restaurant. The first time I worked with Kristen, I noticed right away how enjoyable it was to cook with her. I would tell her once how to do something, and then she never forgot and never asked a question. And she did it perfectly. She was clean, organized, and precise in her cooking. All great attributes in a chef and a necessity in my kitchens. But she also had soul and she had passion. Those are always the two things you really can't teach somebody: passion for what you do and to let your soul come out. You can always teach them the mechanics of cooking, but again, you can't teach them the passion. And Kristen's food has both. It's just beautiful, it's precise, and the flavors reflect the love of food that she's cooking. Her cooking wants to make you eat more of it. As I got to later know Kristen, the person, I discovered she was more than a talented chef. She's beautiful. She was a person of integrity with a fantastic sense of humor. And believe me, we laughed a lot, and we still do. And the fact that she can actually laugh at herself, I mean, that's a great sign right there. So I had no doubt that she would blow them away on Top Chef recently. And whether Kristen stays with me for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, I'm just so excited to see what the future holds for her. I know that she will continue to blow minds wherever she goes and whatever she does, and that makes me so proud. It's an honor and pleasure to work with her, and I'm pleased to now introduce to you Kristen Kish.
Wow. Anyone else nervous? my stomach's in a little bit of knots, but I'm very excited to be here, and thank you, Chef, and thank you to the Ad Club for inviting me to be here. Truly honored. You know, when I think about how I got to where I am today, and what has probably had the biggest impact on me and everything I've done, I go back to a singular event that happened when I was 4 months old. Changed my life forever, in many amazing ways and in some more challenging. In 1983, I was born in Seoul, Korea. 4 months later, I was adopted by a couple and brought to Michigan, where I grew up in a predominantly white, upper middle class suburb. My parents are loving, supportive, generous, and always very honest about the adoption, even before I could understand the concept. Despite being blessed with incredible parents, I still grew up filled with insecurities. I had no real sense of who I was, and therefore had no faith in myself. I think many girls in their early years wonder, who am I? For me, that seemed to be amplified because I really didn't know. I don't know my birth mother. I had never seen a picture. There was a history, a culture, a language, and a lineage that I was completely disconnected from. Because I struggled with my self-esteem, I never trusted my feelings or my instincts. Instead, I became focused on being perfect, on being the person I thought people wanted me to be. I remember as a kid wanting to meet my birth mother because I thought that's what I was supposed to feel. For a long time, this fixation with fitting into this imagined mold guided all of my decisions. For example, at 13, a scout approached me in a mall and suggested I consider modeling. My parents were apprehensive, and honestly, I didn't want to do it either. But I said yes, because I thought that was the right response. And if I became a model, that would validate some of my insecurities about not looking like everyone else. At the age of 18, I signed with Elite, which seemed like a really big deal. Again, this wasn't about passion or excitement. It seemed impressive. My agent sent me to Chicago to do some runway work with other models. To say I was intimidated is a huge understatement. On the first day, I remember walking into the offices. I just stared at all the composite cards of beautiful faces that lined the walls, wishing to be any one of those girls up there. I was afraid to be myself. I was quickly escorted into a hallway to walk. I had no idea how or what that even meant. I mean, I showed up in flip-flops, and apparently every other girl knew to bring high heels. I was miserable, and I was uncomfortable. Whatever positive feelings came from the thought of impressing others was immediately canceled out by how out of place I felt. School wasn't much easier. In high school, I had a teacher ask, what did I want to do with the rest of my life? What a daunting question for a kid who didn't even know who she was. I told him I wanted to be in business and in finance. He paused, gave me a painful look, and said, you? Are you sure? You know that's really hard. And yes, he said this in front of the rest of my classmates. I never forgot that moment or how it made me feel. And I suppose now I can tell him thank you. After high school, I ended up going to a college in Michigan to study just that, business. My first year was horrible. I hated the traditional college life. I had zero interest in aspiring to date the football player or go to any more Halloween frat parties dressed as a sexy kitten. It happened twice. Same outfit, kind of repeated. And a few days into the semester, I knew I had made the wrong choice. I gained the dreaded freshman 15. And that, coupled with the fear that this was it, that this was the kind of life I was apparently going to have, I began to hate myself. I felt like a failure. I became extremely depressed and didn't want to admit it to people who could help me in fear of appearing weak. Thankfully, my mother saw how unhappy I was and suggested I go to culinary school in Chicago. She pointed out that I loved to cook and I loved Chicago. Of course, it seemed so obvious when she suggested it, but I had no idea. I was a stupid kid. And I immediately put that plan into action and was so excited. I don't think I could have done this without her encouragement or her approval. I needed those things to motivate and believe that I could do something, and was years away from being able to identify what I wanted and then going for it. My time in Chicago turned out to be one of the best and one of the worst periods of my life. Sorry, my nose is running. Pardon me. Okay. It's a nervous twitch, I think. Culinary school was an outlet for me to be creative, but I also quickly learned not everyone was there for the reasons I was. I sorted through the other students and tried to surround myself with others that were also there to begin a serious career. My first day included a knife skills class. I picked up my knife and I started to cut a head of cabbage. My instructor came over, she smiled, and said, "You've done this before." And that's all I needed. I now knew this is where I was supposed to be. I really felt like I had something to prove now. I put a lot of pressure on myself. I had to pull it all together and show everyone how successful I could be. Despite the feeling that I belonged in culinary school, I was still struggling with image and self-confidence and managing the pressures I put on myself. Sorry. It'll go away, probably towards the end. I have a tissue, pardon me. 8 more times. And ultimately, oh God, this is a good segue, here we go. Ultimately, these struggles took a really unhealthy turn and spun out of control. I started staying out late and using lots of drugs. I wanted to keep up with my friends and go out and socialize and feel good about myself. Using cocaine was the only way I knew how to do this. I finished culinary school and essentially partied all the time. Looking back, I was an immature, spoiled brat who had no idea how lucky she was. I was also 21, incredibly unhappy, petrified to be myself and to live an authentic life. Despite all the fun I was pretending to have, I still was on search for that perfect chef job. I was only interested in executive chef titles, positions I was wildly underqualified for. No decent restaurant would have or should have hired me, and I was turned down by many. However, I finally convinced a restaurant owner to give me this job and make me the executive chef when I was so high. He had a new restaurant in downtown Chicago, and for a few months, I'd go hang out at the bar every night. I had all this confidence, thanks to the drugs, and I'd talked to the owner and told him, and basically sold him on what an awesome job I could do. To be clear, this determination had nothing to do with the restaurant's reputation, culture, or level of execution. I saw a guy who would give me the job that I wanted. Sorry, here we go again. I swear. And for someone incredibly insecure and immature and desperately trying to prove herself, this is what mattered most to me. The ironic thing was that, despite my delusions and all my insecurities, there was this small, very small but authentic piece of me that knew I could somehow do it. Because the kitchen was the one place where I had faith in my abilities and in my worth. Of course, being an executive chef is more about than being just a good cook. And I'd never run a kitchen or even really worked on the line. Looking back, I'm not so sure I was good at anything at that job, except for thinking I was good at that job. As you might imagine, based upon their hiring practices, it wasn't a well-run operation. Obviously. Pretty soon, my paychecks were bouncing, and after 9 months, I left. Now that I was unemployed, my parents gave me an ultimatum. If I didn't find a job, they would stop paying my rent. But I didn't get a job right away, and they didn't stop supporting me. From the outside, things looked good, really good, and this was really my goal. I lived for free in a beautiful high-rise apartment in Chicago. I went out all the time, and I had no real worries or responsibilities. But inside, I was so twisted, so empty, and miserable. And I didn't care because my priority was how others perceived me and my life. I could not have been more detached from myself. One morning, after about 4 months of constant partying, the sun was coming up, and I hadn't gone to bed yet, and I found myself alone. I had no more drugs to keep me going and was forced to deal with myself and my thoughts and the harsh reality of daylight, literally. And I thought, what am I doing with myself, with my life? Suddenly, the sad reality of being perfect, or how I define perfect, became brutally transparent. What did I have to show for this perfect life? And how happy had perfect made me? And in that moment, I made the decision to pack it up and start over. I stopped using drugs. That was actually the easy part because I never really wanted that anyways. And I moved back to Michigan for a month to gather my thoughts and to construct a plan. And then I moved to Boston. I didn't have a job or know a soul, so I'm not sure how I picked it, but it just felt right. Thankfully, my parents were stricter this time around and said I had 3 months to get a job. This meant no big, fancy apartments or ridiculous job searches for positions with inflated titles. I lived in a room of a friend of a friend of a friend with 2 suitcases and 2 boxes. Of course, old habits die hard, and so I did apply for a sous chef position at Top of the Hub. Starting at the top. I was turned down for that, but they offered me a spot on the line as a cook. I thought about it for 3 days, and I took the job. I was on my way to becoming a real chef. The line at Top of the Hub is massive, and while the food might not be my style, I learned a lot about working in a professional kitchen. I also saw ways I could do things better and realized if someone taught me something, I could do it. I really did have faith in myself. Not being good at a kitchen job simply was not and is not an option for me. Here we go. Excuse me. After some time, I was offered an executive chef title a position at another restaurant, and lured by the title, I took the job. It wasn't a well-run restaurant, but I felt more prepared than I did in Chicago. Fortunately, that experience was a wake-up call, and my next two career choices were based not on ego or superficiality, but on opportunity and education. I got a position at Michelin star chef Guy Martin's new Boston Outpost restaurant of his Parisian restaurant Sensing. Here, I discovered this was the type of kitchen I wanted to be in. This was the level of cooking I wanted to learn and I wanted to master. It required focus, dedication, and skill that I knew I innately possessed. I also knew I could spend many years learning and refining. After 2 years, it was time for a change. And I was persuaded by a good friend to come work at Stir with her for Barbara Lynch. I actually met Barbara at Stir before I even considered applying for a job. I went over to help my friend Steph, the Stir chef at the time, prep. And I was really hoping I might see or meet Barbara. Sure enough, she was there, sitting at the island reading a cookbook. I was working quietly next to Steph when Barbara asked for a snack. I don't know if you remember this, but celery and peanut butter. I found both. And just as I started spreading the peanut butter on the celery, Steph leaned over and whispered, "Peel the celery first." I was like, shit. Of course. The first thing I thought was, this is a woman who knows what she wants and exactly how she wants it. And I loved it. I also immediately realized her commitment, even obsession, with a certain level of precision and attention to detail. That even the smallest, most seemingly basic tasks required that same discipline and detail required of prepping complicated dishes for guests. I admired this. And I realized how much I could learn from a woman like this. Later, once I applied for the position at Stir and was hired, I had my first opportunity to really cook for Barbara and her wine director, Kat Salieri. They were leading a class on a favorite topic of theirs, birds in Burgundy. Barbara basically gave me free rein with the menu. I was terrified, but I created the menu and I did all the prep. That night, with Kat and Barbara leading the class and doing their thing, I cooked, and they both approved. Later, Barbara told me that after she saw the menu and tasted the food, she knew immediately I would be okay and I would do well. See, now it's getting personal. Okay, sorry. Getting to know Barbara personally and professionally has been amazing. I've learned about passion, not just to be excited about something, but to be completely dedicated, always curious, and truly connected to the cooking. I've learned about warmth. For as tough and fearless as Barbara is, and I hope she doesn't mind me saying this, she has taught me about heart and how there's a place for the personal in cooking, for emotion in cooking. Without this heart and this emotion and this soul, I'd still be riding the perfection wave and only be about technique and mechanics. A brilliant dining experience and amazing food memories need more from a chef than textbook execution. Barbara is the first mentor I've had, and it's made a profound difference. I've never been so proud to have someone so proud of me. Okay, on we go. I used to sometimes wonder what it would be like to compete on Top Chef, but didn't really think I had what it took to do something like that. I remember Guy Martin used to say, "There's something special about you." But at the time, I didn't see what he saw. I still don't see what he saw. When a real opportunity came to try out for Top Chef Season 10, it was Barbara who encouraged me. The fact that she believed in me made me believe in myself. I had no idea what I was getting into, but I was afraid if I didn't go for it, I might miss out on something great. So I went in nervous, and curious. And in the first episode, there's a clip where Emerald asks me if I think I can win Top Chef. I quickly reply, I wouldn't be here if I didn't think I could. In truth, I barely believed it. I was going dish by dish, competition by competition, but I thought that's what a winner would say. About halfway through the season, after winning several challenges, I got voted off. I obviously felt defeated and like I had let myself down, but I was also okay. I was at peace with the person I was when I lost. I had been strong at the judges' table and hadn't thrown anyone under the bus. During a moment of high stakes and judgment, I felt good about the person I was, and that got me through my initial disappointment. Last Chance Kitchen was a total surprise, and I was psyched to still be in the game. I didn't want to stop. My goal is to win. Never went away. And winning Top Chef is and was still so surreal. I'm still kind of processing it. I wonder all the time why all these amazing things are happening to me. In my mind, I'm simply a person trying to do right by my family and my friends. You can do this. Trying to do a great job at work and trying to be truly happy. I still have some of the same old insecurities, and they don't magically go away. But what I've found is that experience and maturity have tempered them. Finding something I'm passionate about and willing to work hard at and make sacrifices for has made me a better, more grounded, happier person. And I think these insecurities have helped me to take risks, work harder, and push myself. Not all bad things. I've been asked what I do after winning Top Chef. The first thing was to go back to work. The second was to plan a trip to Korea. The first visit back in 29 years. I will say I'm excited for the future. I'm still growing, learning, and changing. When I was younger, I was incredibly impulsive and made decisions based on what I thought other people wanted me to do. Now, I am more deliberate in my actions. I examine each opportunity and ask myself questions before making a decision so that I am clear on what is actually motivating me. Sorry. I think many people who don't know me expect me to leave my job, immediately open up a restaurant, or travel the world. And had I won Top Chef 5 years ago, I would have done that in a heartbeat. Not because I was ready, but because it would have satisfied my ego and seemed like the thing to do. Thankfully, I'd like to think I'm more mature now and better at making these types of big decisions. Now I'm thinking long-term, about relationships, about building a career, and bettering oneself. I want to be the best, and that means learning. I think many in similar circumstances would probably opt to do their own thing, and some are truly a success. But I feel really good about going in a different direction. Not just because of the lessons I've learned over the last several years, but because I've realized the power and the value of having a great mentor in Barbara. In June, I will become the chef de cuisine at Monton, Boston's only relais and chateau property. I see this as a huge opportunity to learn and to lead and to contribute. And I am confident about what I can do and what I can bring to the table. I know that if I didn't take this position and learn as much as I can, I would regret it in the same way I would have if I passed on Top Chef. So the other thing I'd like to do following the Top Chef win is to go to Korea. I don't think I was ready to embrace my past and go back to Korea before now. I'm very happy with where I am professionally, and versus my time in Chicago, I feel like I have made my family proud. Going back to Korea is not necessarily about finding who I came from, but where I came from. I don't need to find my birth mother to be complete, but I do want to experience the culture. I want to see the village and the clinic where I was born and know exactly where I came from. For years, I have ignored that void I felt because I also knew how good I had it. I was blessed with an incredible family and friends and a career that I love. And these things fill my life with so much. But if I stop and I'm quiet, there's still a void. I feel strong enough now to acknowledge it and to pursue it. I think it will make me feel more complete, but really, who knows? Maybe I'll want to meet my birth mother. Maybe it'll make me feel angry or more lost. I don't know. But I know I can handle it, and I know I have to find out. I spent many years having absolutely no idea who I was and trying incredibly hard to be the person I thought I should be. Thanks to a career that is endlessly rewarding and mentors who saw things in me before I was capable of seeing them in myself and growing a self-awareness, I feel like I'm right where I should be. For me, life is about having no regrets and having the strength to go after things even if you're not sure how they're going to pan out. I realized I always said yes to a lot of things, but for all the wrong reasons. Now, when I say yes, it comes from a truer, more personal, more authentic place, and there is a power and peace in that knowledge. Thank you.